guess that's 6 technically. But the who is really going to be the students. So that's what we're going to be doing. So scaffolding is one of these things that a lot of us use, but we don't really know that we are using it. Scaffolding is where we are using prior knowledge that students may have to introduce topics. So you may go say, what do you know about this word? What do you know about this one? Or you may ask a question and they have to use their prior knowledge to come up with the answers. So that is what the scaffolding is. One reason that we would use scaffolding in a classroom, even in an online classroom, is to see where students are. If students are more advanced, then you could skip over some basic concepts. If they are struggling, they're behind, you may need to go back and catch them up and get them ready for that. So when do we use it? I use scaffolding at the beginning of every unit of some sort. I don't necessarily use it during the unit as we're going, but I will use it every so often at the beginning of a unit. And that's also with the where. Now, the how to use scaffolding, I use Menta Meter. Some people have used Menta Meter in this session, but I use it as a word cloud. This is an example of one that I did in a statistics class that was online. You can do it where you're either doing it with a synchronous or asynchronous modality. It doesn't really matter. If you notice here at the top, it says go to menti.com. So on their personal device, they can do it either on a phone, computer, whatever they want to use. Type in that code and it will work. It will take them to this word cloud. Now, if you try going there right now, it will not work. This is an old code from an old class that I had done. And as students give, in this case, 3 words they think of when they hear statistics, um, the words appear, and you can see them as they appear. We'll have an activity here shortly. There, you'll do the same thing, and you'll see it appear on the screen. The words that are bigger are words that numerous students have come up with. They use the same thing. Some of the smaller words are ones that maybe one person came up with. So in this case, I had 3 words for statistics, and you see probability was the biggest word right there in the middle. And then we had some other words that you may recognize if you've had statistics, and then some other words like I see basketball in there, and business, some other words that people may not have come up with right off, but it's all things that do relate to statistics, and we talk about that. This is one thing that it takes just a few minutes to get through the concepts, and to do this. It doesn't really take away any of your time, any of your instruction if you're doing it. And again, if you're doing recorded lessons, you can have this in the recording, and you can do this one. This actually came from one of my lessons that was recorded. It was a pre-recorded lesson. And these are all the responses that I got from students who watched the recording and they typed in their answers and they were able to see the results that we got. So for today's, there are 3 ways you can access the Menta Meter. So at the top, here's the active one we have for this one. It says go to www.menti.com and then type in that code, the 2275-2998. There's also a QR code. You can click that QR code and it will take you to that. One thing that Menta Meter does is it provides that QR code for you. So if you want to put a QR code and you can just take a picture of it with your phone, it takes you right there. Or if you want to type it in yourself, there's the actual link. You can type in that link. So go into there and type in your favorite Star Trek character, and I will switch over so you can see what is going on. So I'll give you just a few seconds here to look at this, and then I'll switch over to the screen where you can see what other people's words are as they come up. And this is the live version. As you can see at the top, all it gives is the web page, the www.menti.com, and then it gives the code. So use your phone, tab over on your computer to that. Let's see what we can come up with on here. Do we have anybody else that likes other Star Trek characters besides these three? Spock has been a pretty favorite person so far. And as we are going through this again, this is a word cloud. Menta Meter has several things that you can do on there. You are limited on the free version on, I think it's 3 questions that you can ask at any point in time, but you can make a new presentation on there. I have about 20 presentations or so that are on there. This presentation is open for 2 days. So if you let students know you have 2 days to come up with your answers, they can actually come up with these values that we have on here. So if we look at it, it looks like Spock is everyone's, the most people's famous or most favorite person. Looking at there, we also have Picard. Then we have, looks like 6 others that are from various. Now, Uhura, depends on how you spell it. We have it on there twice. And this is one thing, Menta Meter doesn't notice that if you've just misspelled something, they actually have it in there as 2 different words. But that would make it a little bigger if we put them in the same area. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you some of the things that are inside of Menta Meter that you can do. You can have actual multiple choice questions if you want to. So you can see different people's multiple choice type answers. You can have open-ended questions. You can have ranking where they put things into a certain order. Instead of doing your favorite, we could give maybe the captains of Star Trek and have them rank them. Which one is your favorite captain? You can have scales. You can have a sliding scale. You can have different quiz competitions, but it's behaves a lot like PowerPoint or a Google Slides would be, where you can make your different slides in here, and you can actually go ahead and you can do those. So you can do all these different things, and it's a little fun activity that students like to do every so often. That's a little bit above and beyond just listening to somebody go through things, read a book, go through a presentation of some sort. They get to be involved with this a little bit, and they can actually see the results as they go if you're doing it in a live type session. And I think at the end of the time, we'll have some time for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and end my portion of this and pass it on. And I cannot remember who is next, but I can stop sharing my screen and let who else is next coming up.
I think Rebecca's up next.
Yes, I'm ready. Let me share my screen. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Hopefully everyone can see, let's see, my screen. So good morning again. My name is Rebecca Adderley, and this morning I will be discussing reading for understanding, which is one of the juicy nuggets that I got from the ELI cohort that I recently participated in. And for those of you that don't know me, I am an associate professor of speech with the TCC Connect campus and chair of communication arts. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to briefly give you just some of the basics from the lesson. Reading for understanding. We're going to talk about reading strategies, why you should use them, some of the great research that we went over about student comprehension. We're going to spotlight a strategy, specifically how to create annotations. And then I'm going to give you an example of an assignment where you have students create annotations from reading assignments. And this could be applied to any class, any discipline. We all have to read. And, you know, some of the basics, reading comprehension is a learned skill. And even though people may know how to read, they may not have mastered the reading comprehension side of things. And it should be engaging. A lot of people don't like to read. They think it's boring. And so this is a way to make reading more fun and engaging. Reading should help students connect with the course content, and it should help students to think critically. So just think about that. When you think about the reading assignments that you have in your class, be it a textbook, outside articles, OER content, think about, you know, if the students are actually reading, because one of the first reasons why you should use reading strategies is that students don't really read. And we would like for them to read, but you know, realistically, they don't always read. This also would help us to break away from a lecture-centered teaching style where we're just telling the students what they should have gotten from the content. It teaches the students how to read properly, how not to read, and it really makes your class more interesting, and students are able to visualize what they're reading. So it really makes the course content come alive. So really quickly, I want to point out a really great article. We received so many great research articles to support each lesson when we were in the ELI cohort, and this is one of the articles that really resonated with me. It's called 5 Ways to Help to Support Students Who Struggle with Reading Comprehension. And I've just listed the 5 key points of the article, and I've also provided a link below. Once I finish, I'll put a link in the chat with all of the slides that I present, and all of the articles that I reference will be linked in those slides. But the first thing that they recommend is that you should target overall language comprehension in your class, and you should also teach vocabulary. Sometimes we assume that students understand certain words or certain concepts, but we need to take a moment to teach vocabulary and make sure we're all on the same page. We should also teach thinking strategies. Previously, John talked about activating prior knowledge. In addition to that, you could introduce questioning and predicting. They also recommend reciprocal teaching, when you read part of the text aloud, and then the students can rotate with roles like questioner, summarizer, clarifier, or predictor. And then they also recommend that you teach comprehension skills, and that could include making inferences, drawing conclusions, and things like that. So the specific reading strategy that I'm going to talk about today is annotations, creating annotations. And that may be something that many of us are familiar with, but just in case, I have a definition. An annotation is a written conversation between you and the writer, and you're actively responding to the text. So you're pretending that you're talking to the writer as you read, and you can make connections between the ideas in the text and other sources. So how do you have students make annotations? If a student said, how do I make annotations? First, you'd make sure that they're reading a little more slowly than usual and trying to absorb what the author is saying. And as they read, they should be looking for items that are interesting or significant, or anything that they have a question about. And then, of course, some students have textbooks and they may rent those books and they don't want to write in those. So you could use sticky notes instead. But you can also consider using virtual annotation tools, and that's what I'm going to show today. We got some really great virtual annotation tools with the ELI lesson that I'm talking about today. And so if you post something in Canvas, maybe a PDF document, students could take that and make virtual annotations. And I'm going to show you what that would look like. So let's pretend you had a reading assignment. It's an article, and you post a PDF of that article in Canvas. First, you want to give students an annotation guide, and I've provided an example here. Super simple. Maybe you pick 4 colors. I have red, yellow, green, and blue. Red, you're going to underline any keywords and details. Yellow means you're going to highlight something that surprises you. green, you're going to circle any words or phrases that you don't understand. And then in blue, you're going to write your important notes in the margin in blue. So we have these 4 colors, and you have a guide showing the students what they would do with each color. Then you want to provide some written instructions. So I just have some sample instructions. You're going to read and annotate the following document using the annotation guide that's shown on the previous slide. Then it just goes over, underlying keywords and details in red, highlighting surprising information in yellow. Things you don't understand, you're going to circle those in green, and you're going to write important notes in the margins in blue. Now, you may be thinking, well, how does someone do that? I've provided 3 websites below that will allow you to create virtual annotations. You could also use, if I'm not mistaken, Adobe has annotation tools as well, but these are all free options. And so I recommend, if you do something like this, give your students several options. Chances are they may already know different ways to do this stuff, but options are always great just in case. So here's an example. This is actually an OER that we use in several of our public speaking classes, and it's Introduction to Public Speaking. So basically you have the yellow highlights. You can see the red, certain passages underlined in red, certain things are circled in green, and then you can see my chicken scratch at the bottom, just some notes or things to write in the margins. So this could be used to facilitate a discussion activity. If your students are doing group work, maybe the group could meet to discuss who annotated what. There's so many different possibilities for an activity like this one. So if you'd like to learn more, make sure you check out the next ELI cohort, and I'm sure Natalie can give more information on that. But thank you so much for listening, and I will stop sharing my screen now, and I will post these slides in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Cox, and I'll be doing the next portion, and I just need to share my screen. I apologize real quick. All right, and hopefully you can see my screen. And so I'm Kimberly Hawks, and I teach government for the Connect campus. And my section focuses on social responsibility, civic engagement, and culturally responsive pedagogy. So in this particular module of the Engaged Learning Institute that I participated in, the materials on this section really helped me to rethink how I build assignments to meet the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board core curriculum objectives that they listed. So I was able to think deeper about designing engaging lessons that were project-based and apply the material to like real-world experiences and issues. And the sample project I'll show you here in a couple minutes could be done as an individual or partner project or a small group project. I designed it to be done as a 3-person project, but that's kind of what I did for mine. The key objectives that ELI had us look at for this type of assignment were connecting the subject matter to content to real world examples. So I wanted to make sure the skills learned were transferable, to have students think about how they could impact their larger community as well. I decided to focus on a project-based learning piece that was scaffolded as my teaching strategy, to help build that prior knowledge that we've been talking about and break these into smaller, more manageable pieces. So it's important for me to first think about key information my students would need first and how I would build on that to meet the larger project goals. Implementing different and engaging technology resources was another factor. And finally, I wanted to make sure the assignment was broad enough to be inclusive of all students and differing ideas and perspectives so that students could explore their own interests, beliefs, and values. And so all of this had to be thought of in the context of an online class, which was really overwhelming at first. So I had to kind of break it down. I would need to make sure the technology worked, was accessible, the instructions were clear, that I guided and modeled everything the process was going to look like, and had a way for the way to evaluate the outcomes in designing my project. So the ELI, in the ELI, we were asked to take something we already do as an assignment and to upgrade that assignment. And so I had an assignment in one of my current shells that was a discussion board that asked students to write about a law they wanted to change, tweak, or introduce in Texas. And it's one of my favorite discussion boards as students, they come up with fantastic ideas, and there's always a lot of engagement already in the comment section. So I wanted to see how I could not only have them come up with the idea for the law, but how it could be combined with a larger idea, which is the process of how a bill becomes a law as an interactive group or partner type project. And this is one thing I recommend. I think instructors can look at what they are already doing in their classes as a starting point to build up projects. I know it helped me a lot because I really felt like I didn't have to reinvent the entire wheel. And so on the slide, it lists out uh, basically benefits for students of a project-based learning activity. And so in our ELI discussions, one other thing I had to think about is we had talked about the problems we have with online group projects. And so I needed to think about how to prepare for that. So for example, students who are not used to taking more ownership may struggle somewhat with group projects. So I had to think, what can I do? So having clear learning goals and instructions was one. And maybe model the activity for them or provide weekly meetings with tips for structuring what they're working on currently so they can ask questions and bounce ideas off peers. Provide opportunities for students to reflect on or assess their own work and let them know part of the learning process is assessing where they might go wrong and how they can make changes if they did the project again. So for me, this mirrors what they would face in the work world if they're working on a project. So it does have value. And I wanted them to know not everything has to be perfect. Sometimes it's about the process and evaluating it. And so in the end, I really hope that they see the benefits listed on this slide and that they gain, more importantly, more confidence. And so I also had to think, what else could we do to get started? And think about this project or this particular presentation. One thing I wanted to recommend was breaking your project into small, manageable chunks. So I had 4 steps in my project I'm about to show you. And I started with a Word document to write up the 4 steps, kind of get all my ideas in order. And then I converted it to a Microsoft Sway. And if you haven't used Sway yet, documents, what they can do is be easily converted into Sway. It basically breaks it down. I'll show you here in a minute. It contains a user-friendly accessibility checker. And by using Sway, it meant that it was going to make my work easier, more visually appealing, and more accessible overall. So these are the things you need to look for. And on this screen, I'm going to play, and hopefully y'all can hear the sound, the recording of taking my document from the Word doc format to the Sway and how it looked. So my project was taking our discussion board that's in one of our classes, or one of my classes, on where the students discussed what law they'd like to tweak, propose, change, etc., and break it down into a bigger project to scaffold it into pieces so that I can basically evaluate if they understand the entire bill process and how that works. So in this particular, what we're looking at is just my Word document, which I've broken down everything. I've kind of written it out. And it has the step 1, which is the proposal. And in this one, they're going to brainstorm their ideas. I kind of give them ideas of things to look for, and they're going to create a mind map. So basically, that's what they'll turn into me, is a mind map. With their research kind of just bullet pointed. At that point, they should have enough to go into step 2, which is the drafting process for drafting a bill. And so I walk them through how that works, that they'll, if they were doing this down in Austin, they would present to the Texas Legislative Council's drafting attorneys what they want, and they would work with them on basically putting together the language. There's certain pieces that have to be in the bills, and so this drafting manual, we'd walk through parts of it to show them how they can create something that looks sort of like this. And I don't expect them to have a big long bill to turn to me. It would be a 1-page bill, as this one is. Then they would go through the filing process that I understand, or that I can assess whether they understand the entire legislative process. And so they're going to create for me a infographic. So this one is obviously very detailed, and it's just an example, but they would not copy this. I would want them, and then the instructions it says for them to explain, are they going to start their bill in the House or the Senate, and why, what committee. It needs to be the timing of their, what they're looking at to get their bill through the whole process in the 120-day session. So they really have to think strategically about their bill and how it fits this process, and present those pieces in their infographic. Then the fourth piece would be the proposal, which is a written summary and interactive oral presentation to me, where I pretend like the senator listening to their proposal, and they write up a one-page proposal that includes some specific items, and then we meet on Teams for about 10-15 minutes to discuss the bill that they're proposing and talk about any hurdles they may face, and basically it's a back and forth question so I can assess what they know. So that's what it looks like. So if I want to take this and put it into Sway, which is my tech piece, if I go to File, oops, I'm going to go back, I apologize. Go to File and go to Transform. And this Transform to Web Page comes up. You've got lots of options here, but if I click Transform, it takes a few seconds. I've already preloaded it. This is what comes up. Actually, it looks like this when it first comes up. And as you can see, my Word document is now a lot more visually appealing and includes all the links and everything and the pictures and all that I need. I can include more in this. I could include video, audio, etc. This Sway allows you to do it if you want. On the storyline piece where you do the design, the wording and changing, it's like cards is the best way I can explain it. And so you can come in and emphasize different things, accent, add links, add a card with, text, media, grouping. And so that's all very helpful. These also move really easily. So if you want to, oops, if I can get it to move the position, they move around very easily. So it's very user friendly. If I want to change the look of it, I go to Design and Styles. And over here I can do vertical, horizontal, sideways. So that changes just the how it flows. For example, I'll go horizontal real quick. It looks like this. It moves like this. Slides is more like your standard PowerPoint slideshow, how those move. I'll go back to vertical. I can change the color. I can change the font. This would change the banners, the background, all of that. And again, if I don't like what I've done, I can just do the back button up at the top and it goes to the back. What I like is this remix button. If you hit that, it'll come up with ideas for you. It'll remix it different ways. Let's see what it does next time. This time it gave me a vertical option. A horizontal option, sorry. So different looks. If you go in, can do this, and you can play around with that. Over here under the three dots, what's really important is this accessibility checker and accessibility view that you can take advantage of. They're very user friendly. You can duplicate the Sway, save it as a template, and you can share different ways as a viewable item, or if you want to use this as a collaboration piece, say you wanted, instead of an infographic for your group of students to create a Sway presentation, you could do it as an editable piece, or they could, something that could share back and forth and work on, get a visual link, a QR code, etc. Oops, I'm gonna go back out of here. So that's the basics of Sway and how I created How a Bill Becomes a Law as a project within it. And Sway is compatible with a lot of other items as well, which I'll catch in the next slide. So that was hopefully a quick video on Sway. And to wrap up my piece, I took the items from Sway's official site and copied them here to show you what is compatible. There's a ton. I've not used all these, but I'm particularly interested in things that I've heard others using and that I've used: Flipgrid, Google Maps, Padlet, and Pull Everywhere were a couple I pulled out of this list that I want to look at how I can integrate them. And so again, this is a project-based learning idea that Engaged Learning Institute had me, or inspired me to do. And I hope this gives you some ideas of how to take an idea, scaffold it, create a project that's fun and interesting and interactive for your class. And I'm going to unshare.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and everybody else. And I just, as I'm sharing my screen, I just want to say that I think this is one of the things that I love the most about the ELI, is hearing what other people how they're going to apply the things that we learned in their classrooms. So just to promote ELI, the Engaged Learning Institute, and I'll give you some more information about it at the end. But let me just get started. So I want to start out. So John used Menta Meter, which I love, but we didn't want to repeat tools. So I'm going to use, this is actually Poll Everywhere that's integrated into PowerPoint. So this sounds like a strange thing to ask you, but I promise it's going to be related to what I'm talking about. So if you would just take a minute, at the top of the screen, you can either join this Poll Everywhere by typing into your browser pollev.com and then / and it's Natalie RUSSE, so it leaves the L's off, 336 from a browser window, or you can use a smartphone and text. So the number you're texting to would be 37607, and then the body message would be Natalie Russ E with no L's 336. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and join that. Give you just a little bit of time to join. And let me know if you're having any trouble joining. Looks like 5 of you have been able to join, so that's great. So I opened up in this window so you can see I'm on a Mac, so there's a Poll Everywhere app that you can download on your Mac. It works a little bit differently if you have a PC, but at the end of the slides, I have a link to that if you're interested. And so you set up the questions here, and then you can either use it separately as an app, or you can embed it into a PowerPoint presentation if you'd like to do that. So it looks like so far we have a good number of us start with coffee, and then we brush our teeth, and then we have some other things that come in, second, third, and fourth place. So the reason that I asked you to tell me that this morning is no matter what order we did these things, we still got ready, managed to get online, and get to our first meeting. So the reason that I want to say that is I think sometimes when we talk about assignments for students or allowing them to show mastery, it may not be a one-size-fits-all that works for everybody. So just like I want to get up and have coffee first. I don't want to have to get in the shower first. So it's not prescribed, right? As long as I get ready for work, I can kind of do it in the way I want to. And so I think that that's maybe how I look at sometimes allowing students to show mastery in my class. And again, this is something that I learned from the Engaged Learning Institute, and it's called choice assignments. And essentially what this means is you're giving students some choice in how they either tackle their assignment or show mastery. And the why would you do that in your classroom? You may think, well, this is more work, or is it really worth it? So it's supported by research. If you're not familiar with the term universal design for learning, this is something that comes from the organization CAST. And again, I'll share this with you if you want to read further about it. But the gist of this is it says all learners should be able to, pardon me, access and participate in the course content, which means not just viewing the content, but also the way that they engage, right, in practicing or in showing mastery. So giving them multiple ways to do that is one way that we really can engage students. And the ELI uses this universal design for learning as what they call a lens to view the rest of the information throughout the session. Now, why would you want to do this in your class? Well, for one thing, it really increases student ownership. So they're making choices about how they would do this, so they're invested in that process. Further, it gives them some motivation. Maybe they get to choose a way that's a little more exciting to them or is a little less overwhelming. And, some students are more creative than others. And so those who have more of a creative side, it gives them an opportunity to make use of that even in a class like mine, like a straight science class, biology. it gives them an opportunity to be creative in my classroom. So what do I mean by a choice assignment? Well, this can take many different forms. So one can be as simple as, let's say that you're having them write an essay or build a presentation or give a speech. And by letting them just choose the topic, that's a choice, right? You've given them choice. Maybe you're choosing to let them decide, what strategy will I use to make this argument? Maybe it's in the format of how they will deliver it, or it could be in what content they choose to use to build their assignment. Now, obviously, we restrict certain types of resources because we want them to be academic, and but even letting them choose what resources they would use to build their assignment may be one way to give students some choices. So sometimes I think, especially in teaching online, it can seem a little bit scary to do something completely new live in a class. So one thing that I like to do if I'm testing the waters on something is start with a bonus opportunity. So that's what I did. I started with a bonus opportunity that was going to be 10 points, right, on one of their exams. And I asked them before the exam, as a way to help them prepare for the exam, to teach a particular topic to the class. And one thing that I've noticed that helps with choice assignments is create a rubric. It will help you in the grading, and it will help the students in understanding your expectation. This rubric should be able to be applied to whatever type of assignment you're allowing. So I gave my students a choice: make a video, create an audio, write an essay, infographic, presentation. And they chose how to do it, and they chose one of 4 topics. So I didn't just leave it open-ended and said, teach any topic to the class. I gave them a selection of 4 topics. So this is just a screen grab from my class, and I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll just point out, they could do a slideshow, they could create a podcast, a video, and then there are the 4 topics that they could choose from. And these were 4 topics that I really feel like students need to spend some extra time on before the first exam. So it sort of helps them to choose one of those to focus on. And notice that one of the things that I wanted to make sure, if they're going to the trouble to create this, I want them to see each other's work. So not only did they create it, they didn't just send it to me, they posted it for the class in a discussion. And then I wanted them to view and comment on one another's work. So this is just an example rubric that I used in Canvas. And so you can see that it doesn't deal directly with whether it was a video or an audio. It's, how did they describe, or what kind of information, what I expected for them to put in their presentation. So that's, the rubrics if you haven't tried the rubrics in Canvas, they're very nice. It's easy for you to grade more objectively, and it's great for the students to get detailed feedback. And then here's just a few examples of some of the submissions that I received from this particular assignment. So you can see I had the highest percentage of students chose to create a presentation. So you see one presentation here about cellular organelles, and this is just a couple of their slides. Another student chose to create a presentation about macromolecules. I did have only one student that wrote an essay, but it was very well done. And then a couple created videos. So it gave them a way to do that and share. It also gave me an opportunity in the discussion, if there was something that they weren't quite, they didn't quite get, I could write back to them and they could understand that better before they went into the exam. Now I'm going to end our presentation with from everything that you saw today. So starting with John and Rebecca and Kimberly and then myself. And this is kind of putting you on the spot, but any of these ideas that you saw today, you don't have to have a concrete plan in mind, but do you have any ideas? And this, again, you'll use the same text string if you set up a text, or that same browser window with Poll Everywhere. If you have any ideas you would like to share with the group, that would be awesome. And I'll give you a chance to do that. And I did want to, toward the end, I will share with you some of the cohorts that are available this semester for ELI or the Engaged Learning Institute. We would love to have you think about participating in one of those. It's a great opportunity to learn more about engaged learning. It's a great opportunity to meet some of your colleagues from other campuses, and it's a great opportunity to steal or borrow great ideas from your colleagues. So almost everything I use in my class, I didn't create on my own, right? I saw someone else do it and I adapted it for my own classroom. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions for all four of us. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us. And I will share right now on the screen. There are 3 cohorts available for the Engaged Learning Institute in the spring. And I'm just going to go ahead and say, I'll be at the South Campus cohort with Madeline Bowman, and John will be at the Northwest cohort. They all start on February 4th, so you have a few weeks to get your classes in order, and then we could get started. But when I share the slides with you, if you want more info, this will take you there. If you'd like to register, this will take you there. Or Tia Cole and Michelle York are in leadership roles. They're both faculty members, but they're serving as program coordinator and lead faculty facilitator in this for the Engaged Learning Institute. So with that, I'm going to turn off my mic and open the floor for questions. One more thing I forgot to mention, I am putting a feedback form in the chat at the moment, and we would appreciate it if you would take a moment to complete that form. Okay, it should be in the chat now. And John, Kimberly, Rebecca, if you have anything to add, please do so. Thank you all. I learned from all 3 of you again today. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. And I guess you have a little time to refill your coffee before the next session. So hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And thanks for joining us.